All right, guys, so we are dealing with pride and humility again today. So I don't know if it's just something that's popping up for me, everything I say, or if it is clear as day and it's in there. But welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter. Today is day 183. It is July 1st, and actually it's a big day because we are exactly halfway through our reading. So if you've been sticking with me and you've been with me every day, we're halfway through. If this is your first time, guys, we are reading through the Bible in 365 days using the 1-year chronological Bible reading plan that you would find online at oneyearbibleonline.com. You would go on their site, download, because they have a whole bunch of reading plans, download their chronological reading plan, print that up, and then just use your own Bible and read along with that. So today the reading is 2 Chronicles 29:3 through 31, right? So we're just in the book of Chronicles, which if you have never been here before, the book of Chronicles is written by, I think, so we're not 100% sure, I think it's by multiple chroniclers. So like a chronicler is sort of like someone who tells the story of the kings and the people in that area. So I guess right now what we would call them is maybe a historian, but I believe, so what we probably understand is this book has been written after all of so we're in the time where kind of the Israelites have been taken away by the Assyrians, and Judah is starting to become in an area where they're going to eventually be taken over by the Babylonians. And so this is after the time after they come back. It seems like the chronicler has written this book maybe based on what they found in all the historical texts, or what the Lord has revealed to them through prophecy, or what they know from speaking to the older generations, right? So it seems like they are coming across this information. Now, a lot of it is identical to some of the other books. So I'm going to say they had things that they were able to then kind of put this all in order together. But there's a lot of extra information in here that we didn't see in some of the books of Kings. So I want to go into this idea, and I know I've been beating this horse about pride and humility. And because to me, it is so vibrant in the text, I want to make sure that I go over it. And so one of my friends sent me this article, and one of the things that I have a lot of ideas on the horizon, but one of the things that I want to do after I have all of these recordings in and after this year is done is to really go into sort of like Christian living, like how do I live my Christian life in and amongst those that aren't Christians? Like, what does it look like to live life in this world as someone who follows Christ, right? Like, and then a lot of it has to do with how do I approach either people that come and talk to me, or I'm sitting around the water cooler, which I know is probably like an old office thing, but I'm sitting around the water cooler and these political topics come up, or these, real life issues rear their ugly heads. And like, how do I deal with that? What does it mean to follow Christ in these situations? And so I've been doing that. Like some of my friends post memes and things like that. And so I kind of like break them down a little bit. What does it mean? Is this really true? Like those kind of things. All that being said, a friend of mine sent me this article, and it was based on having pride. And her mom was an evangelical, and her mom told her that pride was one of the deadliest sins, right? And so the question sort of is do I agree with that? And then what does that mean? Because the truth of the situation is the girl who had written this article was essentially like, I've been told that pride is the deadliest sin, and yet if I didn't have pride in who I was, I probably wouldn't be here right now, right? So it kind of tears your heart a little bit, right? Because in some ways we are living in a world that we feel less than. And so if I use myself as an example, I'm a woman, so if I use myself as an example, I could let the world tear me down and tell me that as a woman I am less than, right? That I don't have the right equipment, so to speak, in order to do maybe certain jobs, or I'm not as smart as other people because of their gender. So I could be told all those things, right? I could be beaten to be told that I am less than. But what I need to do is I need to go to God's word, and I need to understand what God says about me as a woman. What does he say about women in general, right? Like, how does he show women in his scripture, right, in his word? And then how does that relate to real life, right? And so I'm going to say that pride is very much the same way. Like, so my first question is if you feel like the only thing is I need to feel self-worth, right? Because that was again the article. It was like, I need to have self-worth in who I am in order to be a functioning person in society. And God says, you need to have self-worth. You need to have worth actually in who I am. And that's what's going to carry you on. So how does that make sense when I live my real life? And I know this is really off topic, and I know I'm going to kind of kill time on this, but our reading today isn't that big of that huge. And it's actually, I actually really love this reading, but it's not that huge of a reading, and I feel like I can get through it quickly. So my first question is do you believe that you are created by God? So for anybody who's listening right now, do you believe that you are a human being and God created human beings? And if he created human beings, did he create you specifically? Do you believe, like for me, Kathy Carter, do I believe that God created me exactly the way that I am, right? He knew all the pieces, all the genetic codes that have been put into place. He knew what that was when he created it and when it came out, right? Like, do I believe that? And my answer, of course, would be yes, I 100% believe that. My second question to myself would be, do I believe that that person who created me, that God that created me, do I believe, sorry, I have my questions written here. Do I believe that that creator understands my feelings? So do I believe that he created me? And then do I believe that he understands me? And then all the ways that I feel inside, right? And I'm, obviously my answer is yes, but in brutal honesty, before I was a believer, I look probably extremely average right now, and I my average age and like everything about me would be considered a stereotype. That wasn't always the case. So I struggled with my identity. I struggled with being pretty enough, being smart enough, being good enough, and experimented in all kinds of different ways because of those personal struggles, right? And so I wasn't always the average looking person. I always joke, and maybe I'll put a picture in if I can find one, but like I always had wild color hair, right? Because I needed to walk into a room and I felt like I wasn't noticed. And so I needed to walk in a room and recognize that I needed something different in order to be noticed. Now, I only came to this conclusion by sort of like digging in and figuring that out about myself. But the reality is I told myself I like that. I liked the way I looked. I liked looking different. I liked feeling unique. I liked all those kind of things. I liked walking in a room and someone going, whoa, right? I liked somebody side-eyeing me because I like to be a little bit rebellious. It wasn't the only thing. There were some piercings and tattoos and like all that other kind of stuff that went along with it. And with that, like I have, which obviously is why I'm podcasting, I have a little bit of a bolder personality, right? Like I'm the first one to raise my hand. I'm the first one to ask a question, right? So I'm not necessarily a stereotype, right? And so I always thought to myself, like, how do I fit into this world? And so before a Christian, I just would try and find all these ways. After I became a Christian, I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to be me, and I love the Lord, and it just is what it is, right? And so there were all of those kind of feelings wrapped around it as well, because I had lived in that way for so long. And then my following question would be like, do you think the Creator knows what is good? So I want to be very clear and tell you that dyeing my hair, being the first person to raise my hand, being outspoken, none of those things are bad. So I want to be very clear in that. But I made that my identity, right? That was important, that was who I was in front of people, right? That was the outer shell that I showed to people. And that was what I needed people to see. So especially like even now, like understanding myself, recognizing that I did have a little bit of those bolder tendencies, when I walked into a room and people saw that boldness on the outside, they knew exactly what to expect, right? So there were no secrets. And so I needed that to be like loud and clear to everybody around me. So I want to be, to explain to you, and that was how I wanted everyone to understand that was what they were getting. And if they didn't, or if they judged that, I lacked self-worth, right? So again, with my last question, do you think the Creator knows what is good? So when I was doing all those things, I was showing and kind of like pushing my pride out to everybody and making sure that everybody knew what was going on, because that was me, and I was showing me. What I wasn't showing was God. And what I wasn't recognizing is that my fulfillment needed to come with Him. And so all of this outward stuff that I felt like I needed to do, that was all about me, right? That was my pride. That was me making everyone either recognize or know, or like there's a comfort level, like whatever it might be. Like there were all of these, I could list 100 reasons why I did what I did, but none of them, not one, never on that list, was anywhere to honor the Lord, right? It wasn't anywhere to go that I knew what was good, and because I knew that, I knew that God knew what was good, and because God knows what is good, that is what I'm going to do, right? And that is what I'm going to put forth and in front of people. I'm basing all of that on the understanding that our pride is dangerous because it puts me first, and it makes my feelings the most important thing in the world. And then I decide what is good and not good, not my Creator. So the person, the thing that created every piece of my being, I have decided isn't worthy to follow, but I'm worthy to follow. I'm the one that needs to be followed. I make all of the rules. And some of them are going to be good, by the way, because some of them are going to fall in line with what the Lord loves. That's just the reality about every single one of us. Nobody is evil all the time. It's just an unreality. Nobody is good all the time. Again, an unreality. But what we're doing is we're creating our own ideals of what is and isn't good, because we're not satisfied that God has made, God knows us, and God creates what is good. And I hope that resonates with you. And the whole reason I'm bringing it up is because one of the things that Hezekiah has to have these people do is to humble themselves, is to have them recognize what they thought was good is not good, right? Like they thought they had this list, whatever that list might be, right? They had this list of things that are good. And some of them might have been, some of them might not have been, but the overall reality and the theme is that they were not following God, they were following themselves, or they were following a multitude of other gods that kind of fit into their needs a little bit better. Well, I really want money, so I'm going to follow the God of money. I really want power, so I'm going to follow the God of power. I really want whatever, like you name the list, and that, the God of war, we really want to win this war, so I'm going to follow the God of war. I want to be in love, so I'm going to put an idol out of love. Like, right, all of these things that we decide, they take precedence over the Creator of the human being who knows every single emotion that's inside your heart. God, you think God doesn't know that you feel less than? You think God doesn't know that you're lacking? And then God says, and we're going to see it in Jesus, but God says, like, I am here to fill you. I am your providence. I will save you from all of that sadness, that loneliness. I'm here to fill all of those things. And you're not necessarily going to feel it at that time, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take self-control. It's going to take action. There's going to be actions that you have to do that are uncomfortable for you, right? In order to allow God to give you the worth that He thinks you are. By the way, He thinks you are more worthy than you think you are. He looks at you better than you look at yourself. And so anytime we start thinking, yeah, but He doesn't want this for me, and I really, really want it, it's because He loves you more than you love yourself. And we love ourselves more, like, right? Like, I love myself enough that I'm going to give myself whatever I feel like I crave at the time, and it's not always what's right or good for me. So that kind of chunk being said, just going into what's happening today. So what's happening today is Ahaz has died. Ahaz is not a good king. I got glasses on glasses. I'm like shifting everything around. Ahaz had died. He's the king of Judah. He's not a good king. Assyria has taken over the land of Israel, right? And so Hezekiah is the new king. He's Ahaz's son. He's the new king. And he's like, we're a mess. The Lord has brought terror on us. So his eyes are open. He's recognizing, right? He's recognizing we have all put ourselves first, and we have forgotten the Lord. And in that, the Lord has given us mass destruction. Nothing good is coming from that. And so he goes, so what he wants to do is he wants to bring everyone back to the Lord. And so he goes back and he starts to fix the temple. And then after he fixes the temple, this is like, if you've been with me, guys, which is like my resounding kind of thing that I always say, if you've been with me. If you've been with me, you see that this has happened over and over and over again. You're going to see this repeating. David did it back when he brought all the tribes together. He did this giant celebration and started putting everybody in their spots where they were supposed to be. And then we've had a couple of kings do it after. Well, Hezekiah is doing the same thing. Hezekiah is like, anyone who's left, I want you guys to come down and celebrate with me. We're going to celebrate the Passover. So he is like, he consecrates all of his priests and his Levites again. He brings them in. He cleans out the temple. It takes 2 weeks, 14 days. That's it. That is not a lot. 14 days to clean out everything bad that has happened in the temple. And then the priests start to consecrate themselves. And then they start bringing so much stuff that there's actually, the priests aren't as consecrated as they should be. And by the way, to consecrate themselves means to clean themselves for the Lord. So they go back, they start doing all of these traditional things again that God has asked them to do. By the way, they're not tradition because we just have done them. They're tradition because in this time, this is the stuff that they don't do just because they're supposed to do, but because God has asked them to do it. These are the things that way back when the Levitical priests were first designated as priests that they were supposed to do to consecrate themselves. A matter of cleaning, a matter of using the right like clothing, right? A matter of like the ephod and all of this stuff. And they are all doing themselves, they're making sacrifices, right? All of this stuff. And they're doing that to bring themselves back to the Lord, right? We have been dirty, we have messed up, we have been away from you, and now we're gonna do this mass like spring cleaning, and we're gonna bring ourselves back to you because we recognize that you are the one that created us, and we trust you, and we love you, and we know you know what is good. He goes back and even goes back into the family of Aaron and brings those as the head priest. Like he does all of this stuff, brings those as the head priest. Goes up to Ephraim and Manasseh. So there's obviously still a little bit left up there. If you remember, Assyria took some people, but not all people. So there are still some people left up in there. And so he goes up and he sends out this letter and says, listen, I'm going to consecrate the temple. I want you guys all to come. We're all bringing ourselves back to the Lord. And they're like, whatever, get out of here. So even then, there are people who are digging their heels in. They're like, yeah, I know we've been destroyed, but we're fine. We're just going to go to another God, or we're going to make choices ourselves, or we're just going to live through it. Whatever their excuses are, they're ridiculing, and they're essentially like, we're not going back to the Lord. But there are people who do, and the people who do, it says that they humble themselves. This is where my whole sort of speech came in the beginning. They have to humble themselves. You cannot just come back to the Lord and be like, thanks, dude. It's all been real. High five. Now I'm back. I know I walked away, but now I'm back. And so you get me, right? As if God gets an award by getting you back. No. You get an award by turning back to him, but you must recognize first that God is the creator and that this is the things that we're supposed to be doing because God asked us to do those things, right? So when you say to yourself, I know that God asked me to do that, but I'm not doing that. Think to yourself, right? Think to yourself who it is that you're speaking to, who it is in your hearts that you're speaking about, right? And so anyway, so they all wound up coming and so half of them ridiculed, whatever, we're not coming. And then the rest of them humbled themselves. You could see at one point they're all so they give away all these offerings. They bring food, they start tithing again, they bring all this kind of stuff. And then once they start doing these burnt offerings, right, to clean themselves, then they kneel down and they pray. So it's not just, they don't just, remember he says, I don't care about your sacrifices, I want your heart. It's not just, okay, I'll give you 10%. Just leave me alone after I give you 10%. It's so much more than that. So they give abundantly. They kneel, they pray, they praise, right? They offer themselves to the Lord. They turn their hearts back to the Lord, right? And there's even a point where Hezekiah prays because he's like, there weren't enough consecrated people in order to do all the offerings. And so other people started doing all the offerings. And so Hezekiah was like, Lord, I just want you to accept this because we're not all completely consecrated, but I still want you to accept this, knowing what their hearts are like, right? Knowing that their hearts are turned towards you. So he doesn't even assume that just because their hearts are towards them, that the Lord is going to accept it. He asks, hey, Lord, please, I know we haven't done our due diligence completely yet, but we really want to honor you and love you. And we ask that you accept this. And guess what? The Lord did accept it because of their humble hearts, because of their recognition of God, right? So the Lord completely accepted it. And then they had so much food, like so much of an abundance afterwards. So afterwards, again, the people started tithing, right? And they started saying, like Hezekiah was like, I want to make sure that the priests and the Levites only have to dedicate themselves to this. So now we need to kind of go back to that policy where you guys tithe all the time, right? You give of your first fruits all the time in order for them to be able to remain in the temple and to do the things that they need to do for the Lord. And so they started tithing all of their stuff, so much so that they needed to have a whole bunch of people dedicated to distributing that amongst all the Levitical people, right? Amongst the priests and the families and, right, like all the kids and everybody in there. So, and on top of that, they went out after the big celebration and they tore down all the Asherah poles, right? They tore down all of the high places. So Hezekiah is really cleaning everything up for everybody. So, I think that's kind of mostly where we're coming here. So they did free will offerings. And then at the very end in verse 20, so again, this was kind of all about rededication of the temple. So in verse 20 of 2 Chronicles 31, it says, this is what Hezekiah did throughout Judah, doing what was good and right and faithful before the Lord his God. In everything that he undertook in the service of God's temple and in obedience to the law and the commands, he sought his God and worked wholeheartedly. So he didn't do one or the other, right? He didn't, I'm just going to work and I'm going to do everything that I can to make this great, right? Like I can do it. I can rebuild this all over again, right? I have enough people. He didn't just do that. He didn't just seek the Lord and say, Lord, please fix everything and make it all better. And then we can just go back to the temple. He did both because both are required, right? It is both required for you to fully and wholeheartedly seek the Lord, and it is required to you to fully and wholeheartedly work as what he asks you to do. And then he follows up, this is the end of the chapter here and the end of our reading, and it says, and so he prospered. And because Hezekiah did all of these things for the Lord, he prospered. So that's it for today. That's how we're ending today. I feel like it's just such another blessing. Like I feel like it's David all over again. It's really exciting. And so if this has been a blessing to you in any way, I want you to like it, share it, subscribe to the channel so you guys can come back and read with me tomorrow. In the meantime, keep reading and I will see you guys next time.